You don't have to repeat all of
Yeah.
that.
So we were, I think I wasn't paying attention. But you guys were talking about labeling people, and I'm joking. I'm sorry. uh yes. So thanks for hopping on the front end pairing. We are gonna be talking about uh Apollo cache, but persisting this across multiple requests for a much improved perceived and even real user experience. Because I notice sometimes if I'm just clicking through things, it's like, oh, there's my issue, go. I don't even have to wait for the real request. And so that's the idea, and it's a real win. There's a slow query, and so we're going to try to persist the previous response uh, to remediate the real problem from the user. Obviously, and Natalia could probably deep dive into this as she's wrestled with the need to do this, is we don't want to do this for every slow query because the problem of our query is slow still needs to be addressed. But this is a nice to have. Yeah.
I know I'm jumping the gun, but I'm really interested to know what logic you were going to use for timings to like update that cache, if that makes sense.
So the point is, updating the cache is very simple. We do it in two ways. Some of our queries, most of our queries, are what we call smart queries. That's what you put in the Apollo in the components, or sometimes you use a smart query, but most likely you see them in the Apollo option.
Mm-hmm.
Why they're smart? Smart queries are subscribed to the cache. What you see as a result is a result from Apollo cache. If cache is updated in any possible way, automatic with mutation, manual with write query, you see the updated result immediately because they are reactive to the cache. In the case of the smart query, we simply put a policy cache and network. With some hacks, but what cache and network does, essentially it should take the first response from the cache, and the data is there because we persist the cache. And it should send a network request in the background. Why I'm saying should, not sending. It does send, but unfortunately with Apollo 3, there is an interesting bug where it just skips the first step. It just sends the network request and ignores whatever is in the cache until you put a very specific option called notify on network status change. In this case, you can have the first result from the cache and handle the network one.
Cool.
However, we also have simple queries. And in the case of filtered search, we have simple queries. What is simple query? What is different from smart one? So smart one essentially is observable. It's subscribed to the cache via the Apollo implementation of observables called Zen observable, but it's observable. Observable can have multiple results. Whenever cache is updated, we have so-called next callback, and you see the result. Simple query is a promise. It's not different from Axios call. So it shows whatever it returns from the API. It doesn't really care about the cache. Whatever is returned with the promise is displayed. And this is the case with labels too. You can update the cache manually. It doesn't care. It doesn't react to the cache update. It only reacts to the call of the method. So in this particular case, we are doing even a bit dirtier thing, I would say. We call in two methods. One is fetch labels, which is hitting the cache and returning us whatever is in the cache. And second one, what I call fetch latest labels. The naming is weird, but it sends the same request with policy network only. Simple queries cannot do cache and network. They don't know about the cache. So we're sending this strictly to the API immediately after we show the first result from the labels. So whenever you open labels, you see the result immediately, but somewhere in the background, there is a network request happening.
Awesome. So it always does the
back
end call, but it will just, if you've got a cached version, it will show you that until such a point that it gets the response.
until the network is resolved. The next, for example, if you just took the cache result, you don't wait for the network one, you close the dropdown, it will still be updated. So next time you open the dropdown, you will receive the next version that basically brought them. So it should be very updated cache. It should be up to date with the backend. theoretically, and we have other tools to invalidate the cache. Paul actually asked about this in the MR. For now, we're not doing any cache invalidation manually. We're not purging the cache, we just rely on it exists. We will do this in the future.
Awesome. So where are we at? What questions have we got? What's our next steps? What's
Yeah, so I'll share the MR, and I was going through replying to some things. So there's big crazy idea that I had to Natalia. We can talk about that first, or we could
let's start with the most important part, and this is persistence mapper.
Yes. So right now we are targeting what do we persist by looking at the query, and we can decorate the query with here's how we need to persist things. But what Apollo cache persist actually saves is our state. And so we have to somehow transform these query decorations into persist decorations on the state, which are then living inside of the cache. And so this creates the need for a thing called the persistent link, which is a link in Apollo cache, which is like a middleware for queries coming in
for decorating and undecorating.
Right. So looking at this, and once I saw persistence mapper, I was like, oh, maybe we could just talk to this. And I couldn't get that idea in my head, so I was like, I gotta see if I could do it. And it's okay if we don't do it. I was just like wanted to see if we could do it. So the idea is, instead of the developer adding persist decorators to the query, we would give some sort of parameters that would get passed to the persistence mapper. And that rather than the mapper looking for these persist keys, it would just match based on these patterns. So this is a patch I put together that implements, instead of adding the @ persists and the underscore persists throughout the queries, this is all that we would need is based on what's being stored. These are the keys we need. We need label types, issue types saved. And then from project and groups, I only need the issue and labels that have nodes and page info. So we're not going to cache the counts and stuff like that. This clearly isn't like ideal. Like it's weird having to, for one, I'm using regex and lots of people don't even like using regex at all. And like, this is clearly weird. My main question is, I think it's potentially a better developer experience just decorating this on the query I want to cache. But do we save maintainability from the implementation side this way? And are there any other kind of concerns, like with the way with this specific problem and the way our priorities are with this, of hopefully we're not doing this too much either? Does this approach, is it more favorable than decorating the queries? And
the main problem with the approach is we are not selective enough. The thing is, we have multiple queries that have root as project and group. That goes with assignments, milestones, basically for all the options in the dropdown, even within the same application. How do we tell in the cache patterns that we want exactly this query to be cached? Like only this little one with labels or only this little one with issues. So we can use cache patterns, but they will be much more detailed than we have right now. So what we can do potentially is maybe we could rely on the query name in this particular case, because probably, I mean, in our code base, query name should be unique. This is ensured by the linter. Operation name is unique. So if we could include somehow the operation name in the regex, if we can, I'm not sure we can access this in the pattern. I think we can try, because the query is passed whole, right, as just a document, as a string. So maybe if we could do this, it would be fine. But also, both patterns are not perfect in terms that if I modify the query, if I add any more entities or if I add something else in the issue, and also we're not including part of the issue here, unfortunately, that we should. For example, in this particular case, we also would need to work with assignees. Assignees of the issue should be also included as a property, so user. Like not only label an issue, but user or user core. I don't remember what assignee belongs to because we're fetching a list of issues with assignees. And this would require us every single time when we add one more nested property to the cached, either decorate it with persist, which is far from perfect, or modify the cache patterns, which is far from perfect too. So I don't have a good decision. I really like the pattern. I just think that it should be more refined, that we can ensure that this query and only this query is persisting, because currently this one will include also 5 other queries.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think that's this. You bring up a good point. If this runs the risk of previously, you have to add the persist everywhere, otherwise the caching is probably lost. Here, we're probably being because we're matching so liberously, like we're gonna potentially cache more than we need, and finding that balance is gonna be the key. I did,
but the idea is good. Don't get me wrong.
No.
Just like
it's just an idea. Yeah. I didn't get to share this with you. I did. So when I was working on this, I used what was shared. I used what was saved on your branch in the cache as like, I saved that out and I kept iterating to like figuring out, okay, what can I do to get the cache looking the same? And so with these properties, the cache looked the same on load. And when I searched and when I did the open up the labels, I don't know if there's any other way to trigger queries, but this was the one like weird quirky thing about it is this may not be intuitive, that so we only would include queries. We're not including the count queries because those show up in the cache, but they're not persisted. And we don't want to persist those. We're only persisting. And so here, rather than selecting by query, we're selecting by the state of like the issues that actually have nodes. I love the idea of, it would be great if I could just say local cache queries and I just type in the name, or like that would be fantastic. Or even if all I had to do was just add persist, that would be really
cool. And it was possible in Apollo 2. We were discussing it on one of the front-end pairings. So Apollo 2 was way more liberal in this. You could decorate the response the way you want and say, okay, fine, you want 5 properties here, fine. But Apollo 3 is like, you don't have this in the request, strip everything. So and it was really bad.
I have an idea for you then regarding that. We could
revert to Apollo 2.
Why did we move to 3 in the first place? I'm joking. Every time we upgrade things break. It's hard for me to understand why we upgrade. I'm joking. So here's an idea. This is weird. These are crazy ideas. So we could get persistent link. What if we had this? Keys to persist. And this is some sort of thing that will be mutated by the persistent link.
Could you just remind me, Paul, why? So what was the problem? So you said Apollo 3, there's something with those persist decorators that.
Yeah.
What's the reason for looking at these kind of cache keys or this alternate approach? Can you remind me or help me to understand that a bit more?
Well, the reason I bring it up is I found persist link is doing a lot of parsing of the query. Like this is a complex module that's happening here. And I wondered, do we need to? And once I saw persistence mapper, I was like, maybe we could provide other keys. but there is a trade-off. And so Natalia's bringing up of like the idea would just be,
So you mean we could do away with this
we
entire
could
class or
simplify
file
our
or whatever you want to call
implementation.
it?
Is there a way for us to do that, especially
Okay, but it makes it a lot harder. Well, yeah. So you sort of win some, but you lose some, so to speak.
Yeah, that's the whole point. And unfortunately for us, the examples that Apollo Cache Persist brings for link and mapper, not working with Apollo 3, even though the library is called Apollo 3 Cache Persist. They just kept them from Apollo 2. And the example of persisting is a bit simpler. Probably Paul would be happier with this one. It's not as big, but it's simpler only because in Apollo 2, persisting didn't need to do so many things. It was only removing the decorator, one decorator, add persist, the directive, like add skip or add include.
Yeah,
and that was it. It was only one decorator you put on the query and being happy with that. And Apollo 2 was fine with that, because then you take the directive and you recursively go through the leaves of the object, just putting persist true in every single entity you find and returning it. It didn't need to be in the query. With Apollo 3, we don't have this nice thing. We just need to do lots of manual work. And it doesn't make me happy. And as I told in what it was, application performance session, that when we move to front-end caching, we need to realize that either way we go, the price is high. The price and developer experience is high, like really high. We will be either decorating queries or just remembering to put things in persistence mapper or pass them as a parameters. Like either way we go, the price is still high. There is no easy way for now to make the caching work. And we need to understand it when implementing it in production. So if it's labeled query, most of the people that work with like, okay, fine, whatever magic you are doing, please just make this faster.
Yeah, I mean, so this like persists.
Yeah, you see,
show up a lot of times, and it's yeah, that's not ideal. So I'm fine if we're just like, hey, we're just gonna do it this way for right now. I'm just bringing up the brainstorm for us to talk about it.
No, it's amazing you do, because we can try to work with persistent mapper patterns, and so maybe
I have
we
an
can
idea
automate.
though. I think you like this, because we're pretty much guaranteed a timing of the link being executed and then our persistence mapper being executed. So if we had a shared reference to some object that just housed keys that we're going to persist, what if instead of the persist link writing these directly on the object underscore persist, wrote to some object that's going to be read by the persistence mapper. So this then we'll share this same shared object to persistence mapper keys to persist. This allows us to circumvent. We don't have to return data that's not actually in our query. That metadata lives inside this like shared object that the link will write to, the keys we need to. So anytime it sees an at persist, whatever the return was, we'll just spread that of like all of these keys we got to persist. And that's then what the persist mapper will read every time it needs to persist is like, hey, what are my keys that I need to read? And or like,
but how do we return it from the link? The link is basically, it returns the response of the query. How do we plan to move it to persistence mapper? That's the point. What the link is doing is interceptor. It has the request and response, and it works with request and response. That's why we're modifying the response, because that's what we have in hand. So how do we make it pass through link?
Yeah, so that would be this. I mean, this isn't great because we have shared. I'm receiving shared state. We're planning on mutating, but
yeah, and nobody likes it. It's not functional programming.
let's just take, let's put all the functional idealism aside.
Is it even okay, who are you and where is Paul?
I know. So this receiving this intermediate object means I don't need to return underscore persist. information I want to send to persistence mapper, I write to here. So instead of the query having to figure out how to update and resolve persist, I would imagine it'd be something like, is a persist query on the operation query, and if it is, write keys from response to keys to persist, and then pass through. So this is just a pass through link. It just writes the keys we need to persist by reading the response. And then
effects on the link.
Yeah, it's weird. No, it's definitely weird. This is still in brainstorming land, but is this potentially more desirable than requiring underscore persist everywhere and requiring these like having to update and manage what we're returning as well? It's like, this is just the idea.
Can I just ask another remedial question? Was this only a problem for simple queries?
No, that problem applies to
Okay.
all queries, unfortunately.
No, that's easy answer. Thank you.
I mean, we could skip all the persist part altogether if we were sure that for this certain application, we just want to cache everything. Like whatever Apollo sends, cache, 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 and cache. If we cache everything, we can just drop persistence mapper and persist link altogether because there is no need, right? We just cache in everything. So what caching client is doing is opt out, not opt in for now. It's just basically when it's enabled, it caches everything. If you want it to be selective, you need to work with this persistence mapper. So we have this all weirdness going around because we need to tell, okay, only cache this, and that query, and rest of them skip, please. So yeah.
Does this I'm now thinking I am naive here, I'm realizing. The result.data doesn't look like the data we live in the cache. It looks like the data, right?
Yeah, it's what we return from the API.
Yeah, that's frustrating. That's not gonna work.
I know, right? It's like, honestly, I know we are recording, but all this MR was frustrating from start to finish, even like before we started on it. And the library is very frustrating too, because if you work with it, it's very much half-baked. They just put the basic usage in place. And if you want any advanced thing, go read these examples we put here for React Native. Like, what? Okay.
Yeah.
And half of it doesn't work because if you just follow the example, you will see the issue created saying that it doesn't work for Apollo 3. But we need to figure it out.
So again, another silly question, but is this something we should be working on in the upstream project rather than in the GitLab project?
The point is that I doubt that we can work on upstream project directly. I don't think they're merging anything actively right now.
Right, okay.
We can try, we can fork, we can work with it, but before even starting contributing to it, this MR serves as proof of concept, as just a validation of the idea. That's why it's very questionable, I would say too, and that's why we're doing this brainstorm.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool.
Because we need to see if it's safe, if it's secure, because there was a great question from Paul about security too. What about validating the cache? And are we even sure it works as expected? And for this, we need to just put it in place, enable the feature flag, and see how it plays with everything.
Yeah, and that's totally.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's.
Yeah, no, I was saying if that's our like, feel free to, short circuit the discussion of like, hey, we want to.
Yeah. Shut up and merge. No.
No, I'm saying like, well, I mean, for me, the discussion is relevant to. These are concerns I would want to address before we start spreading this. And so if it's like, okay, we're testing something out. All right, let's comment. We're still discussing this. Here's where the discussion is happening. We want to test this in prod. That's why we're doing this. Like, we can totally go that route with this too.
No, I really value your comments on this, and that's why you're assigned. Because if I wanted it to be merged super fast, there are a few maintainers you can just assign and get it merged without any discussion. We know this.
When you said, sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And that's why I brought you, and team probably will bring Mark as well, because I wanted discussion in this merge request before we even test it in prod, because it's also some certain risk that we have. So yeah, and if we can find any better way in terms of development experience, that would be the best. Unfortunately, this link is what they recommend as a way on Apollo Cache Persist. That's first and foremost the reason I went this route, because that's a recommendation from the library. Like, create a link, create a mapper, work with it. And also because it does nice matching with queries and entities.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that totally makes sense. And to me, the alternative would not have been obvious without seeing this implementation. And it's like that, to me, this is just the natural thing that happens when you have multiple eyes on it. And I think it's gotta be possible for us to live with just one persist
Ooh.
on top of the add persist.
On the root query.
On the root query.
How?
And we would I think the mapper is going to have to be a little elegant at being able to traverse what's refed and keeping a cache, like tracking all of the things that are refed from the root query recursively.
So what do you want to do in the mapper? So whenever we have root query, we create a list of refed things, right? Referenced in the root query. And then for every single nested, we perform the same kind of traversing down, because refs are not only on the root, right? Every single nested ref can also contain refs. So for example, if there is an issue ref on the project, it also refs labels and milestones and assignees and everything. So instead of having a key underscore persist, you want to just basically have all the refed things. So how do we do this? Do we perform a traverse first and save all the refed things, or do we do this step by step?
I would, I think I'm feeling a recursive algorithm coming. I like recursive.
Yeah, that's why I'm like asking.
I think coming to it would start at root query. It's where we'd want to start. And that's where we get, clearly that's what we're going to persist. We'll persist all of those that have this thing, I guess, or
add persist. Basically, whenever we have add persist on the root, we want to persist every single entity that is inside of it.
Yes. You're right. And I did notice that too. This exists on the cache as well. So yes. So all of those, we would just look for those. That's great.
Okay.
We would look for those. I'm kind of feeling like maybe we could look for this child, but that's irrelevant.
We can, if decorator doesn't work, we can live with one persist at the root level.
Right. But then once we have that, we have a function that says deeply persist, or like deeply include, whatever it is, this ref. And so then we would read that ref, and we would somehow we would save that out. But then from there, we'd have to read all the other refs, and those refs, we would say deeply include this ref. And we would just.
One thing that we need to account on is that we will have the same refs coming from multiple different queries. And we need to, but they will also go through persistence mapper. And we need to make sure that we cache only those that go through this query, this particular one, not all the labels that come with the same ref.
Yeah, and I think, yes, and that's why we would do it this way, going from the root query first, finding only these ones, and then we just deeply find those ones. Man, that algorithm's got me excited. Do you want to try doing that?
Right now?
Right now?
If you want to code it, please.
I think we could. Let's try it. Because the persist link is actually going to behave as we expect. So I think what I'm going to try to do, oh, this is for groups. Wait, is it for group? Oh, we do groups.
There is for projects and groups. I've been testing it on the project.
Oh, okay.
It's just weird query that they have in place where you skip half of the query and include the second one, depending on where you're at the group or at the project issue list.
Right.
You can see.
Oh, wait, I'm thinking. What am I missing? Oh no, something's. Oh, I gotta get this running. Okay. Sorry. I'm realizing something might not be as ideal as I was hoping it would be.
Yeah, it's always like this with caching.
No, it's because they share the same ID. You're right, because the project. Oh no. You're totally right. Here I am just naively saying, oh, Natalia, have you thought of this? And I know you have. So this will have, you're right, this will have a ref, if I remember correctly. And this, why are you, oh, you don't like it because I wasn't writing real code. All right. Let me go ahead and just undo what I was. This will have a ref to the whole project object that gets populated from all the queries, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
That's why we decorated every single property. So, for example, our issue list will bring us issues that have this little persist true. But at the same time, the issue count will bring us issues without this little thing. And that was the difference. A project is still the same. The root is still the same. The reference is still the same. Yes,
Yeah.
Apollo caching it's huge pain.
Well, I mean, all right. So then I'm gonna probably say the pain is probably a feature so that we don't do this too much.
I mean, we still can play around it, and I really like the idea of simplifying the persistence mapper. And maybe we can evolve and just go in this direction, seeing like what the mapper is. If we include the name of the query, maybe it will do a thing.
Yeah. Why is it so upset? Oh, Webpack. I think the decision is going to come down to and we don't have to make the decision on the call, but I'll leave a summary comment of our discussion on it. But we can either target this selectively from the query side or very broadly from this state side. And I think that's kind of the best we can do.
Yep, exactly. And we will need Tim, because Tim is kind of product owner for this feature. He would need to decide because he knows what is the end goal here. For me, it's basically narrowed down to implement the caching and we will see how it works. So yeah.
However you want to go about it, I'm just making a suggestion. If you feel like our priorities are going to live better if we could be more selective with it. Yeah, if we don't see us doing this too much, the other idea I had was like, what if we have at here where I'm creating a client, this is where I put like our local cache patterns.
Mm-hmm.
What if I just passed in the persistence mapper here? Like, and I'm not trying to do anything fancy with it. I'm actually selecting these are the ones.
Like, I mean, it's fine. I think we can simply just add a parameter and then accept it in the GraphQL lib, where we just take the persistence mapper that you created, and it's completely fine.
I mean, there's no, nice developer experience, but it's like the footprint is smaller than elsewhere.
We just need to make sure that persistence mapper is selective enough. Okay. That's my main worry here, that we're not caching things that are not supposed to be cached. And we can test it thoroughly because this particular application contains so many queries with the same root, like project or group, that we can see what is cached, what is not, how persistence mapper is working. So, and yeah, forget about nice developer experience. It's Holomar is against nice developer experience.
But you see how I get nerd sniped. I'm like, I get the hesitancy with this in the first place, and like, okay, this is a necessary evil, but I'm trying to make it as nice as possible, which I'm not an efficient person, and naturally in that regard. I'm the kind of person that my wife would make fun of. Let me not end the sentence there. Because when we dated in college and when I was in school, I would have like, class in the bag, but it was the final and I could have like failed it and still, gotten good grades. But I'm the kind of person to try to get perfect on the final and just perfect on everything. So I've grown a lot since then. Let me find yeah, we're pretty close.
Project with issues.
Yes. The flighty project with issues.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yep.
Root query project has a ref just to the project. That's so frustrating.
I know.
Uh
See, there is persist true, and this is what is different.
yeah. I tell you though, Apollo's pretty fancy. It's fancy.
Tell me about it. I know it's fancy. That's why I still have a job, Paul.
That's why you have a job. Yeah, no, that it makes sense why we're being selective. Cool. Yeah, no, I think I'll leave a comment summarizing. There's just a trade-off here. We could be very permissive, and maybe this works on some pages, but then we wouldn't need these things, or we can be selective. I'll leave it up to you, and if you want to leave it up to Tim, that's whatever you want to do there. Thanks for talking this out. That really helped. That helped me.
Yeah, thank you for the nice review. At some point I was like, oh, was I wrong about persisting? Like, yeah, I wasn't, because I remembered that we also have this entities and we need to separate the entities with persist true from entities without persist true.
Yeah, that's tough. I feel like there's got to be some sort of like key based approach, but I'm starting to let that feeling die.
No, I'm sure that there is easier and nicer approach. The point is, it will come with iteration. There will be someone, you or someone else, that will come up with better solution for that. And I'm quite sure about this. Like, I'm just not doing it myself anymore because I was frustrated for 2 months writing this merge request.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Okay. So I'll write a summary comment on there. The other big question I had, I don't know if you already tested this, and then I think we can just take the rest of it offline, was this was complete news to me. I had no idea when you signed out.
I had no idea too.
That's got to be new, because that's not always been there.
Yep.
Has it always been?
Can you please log out on the page where you're at the GDK, and let's see if the cache is deleted, because I have my doubts.
I did too, but it does. And
it does? It deleted it?
This actually breaks a whole lot of other features.
Yes, it does.
Because we do, like, if I have a draft of something and then that all gets saved in local storage. And then if I just log out, like, it's gone now. So it's for some security reason.
What draft? I thought they went on the server, because if I do a draft on my mobile, I thought it stayed on the PC as well.
Are you serious?
I might be wrong. But
okay, log back, and we will see if it populates a local storage on the login. Okay, you're on the issue. What is your local storage now?
Yeah, so yeah, here's my local storage has got
I mean, it's emoji and it's it.
Yeah, those, and then if I go here, it'll do the Apollo cache one. Yeah,
I mean, of course, but it's on refresh. But what if you created a draft somewhere it goes to the server, right? I think Lee is right. Drafts
I
on
didn't
the
know
server.
Now you're making me question myself.
I didn't think so. Where is new issue? Why can't I do this?
It's
So just go into one of those existing issues or merge requests or whatever you've got open there.
Well, that's why I
new,
can't.
new issue was there.
Oh,
I
it
was
was?
just yeah, it was there. I was creating issues from issue list. I still can create issues from issue list.
So
Maybe
just
I'm not on the latest master.
Well, maybe I'm not actually different.
go into one of these existing ones for one of these that you've got in front
Oh,
of you.
I can start editing it.
Yeah. Just start adding a comment.
Yeah, just create a comment and we will see about that.
Oh
go to
no,
the
probably
issue.
doesn't want me to do anything because it says my license expired. I've ignored that for so long. All right, I need
It
to.
should only block you from EE stuff, right?
I guess creating issues is a enterprise feature. I'm joking.
Yeah, of course.
All right, let me edit an issue. Clearly, I
Yeah.
can create one, but I'll.
Let's go to the issue or incident or whatever. Just create a draft command and we will see if it stores
Yeah,
it.
I think you're right that edit. I think that probably isn't serverable. I think that is
Yeah, here it is in local.
local. But I think if
Yep.
you do a draft comment, like a reply or stuff.
Yeah, I see it in autosave. It's an autosave. It's an incident, right? Test and whatever.
You're
if
right.
you refresh a page, it will be here and we know it.
Yes, but if I log out and come back, it'll be gone.
Cool. What if you're logged out forcefully by the instance? It will be the same, right? Because sometimes we're logged out from the instance.
No, that's what's interesting.
Oh.
I was trying to figure this out. It is because that's why I've never experienced this at .com. On .com, my local storage is
Yeah.
but on sign out, only if I click that, it gets rid of it. And I was surprised to see that even locally. And I couldn't figure out where that's happening because I didn't think clearly the server can forget cookies, but I couldn't figure out where are we telling the client to delete all of its stuff.
On the button click.
Well, I tried finding that. I couldn't actually get to it.
Interesting.
Yeah, anyways, that's a mystery to me that I'm like, oh, this clearly is doing something. This news to me. But yeah, you see the drafts here aren't when I say drafts, I meant unsubmitted comments, not our official draft feature.
Yeah.
The other big question I had here was where did I put it?
It's on the bottom of the MR.
I labeled it performance, but I really I think I actually mean like reliability, because since we only have a certain amount of size, what does happen if we hit the max? Is it just this stops working?
It starts overriding from what I get, because currently it's just, it will start just, I think, deleting old entities and creating, but we need to experiment because I never reached 1 megabyte on my GDK.
If you haven't tried out, I'll try it out. And I'll just say, I'll just write it to do for me of P Slaughter. Take it to the all right. Yeah, because I was just curious because I can imagine a worst case scenario of after using this for a week and then all of a sudden, worst case scenarios, this breaks Apollo somehow. Like we don't actually get the real response. That shouldn't happen.
It won't. That shouldn't happen because Apollo is smart enough with cache network policy that if something is broken, it will just fetch. You probably have noticed a few issues. Maybe you didn't, but with Apollo, there is a huge point that if something is just very slightly off with a cache, it will immediately refetch. It happens a lot with work items. And I have a lot of things about this. So for example, people fetching work items and fetching work item nodes that has slightly different response. Cache is updated and Apollo is like, it doesn't match what I have to do in the cache, and it just prefetches everything, like 5 more queries are firing. So we're safe in these terms. If something is, so if there is a query asking for, let's say, nested entities with 3 levels, and we only put 2, Apollo will be like, not there, refetch. It will just hit the server every single time something is missing. It still needs to be investigated because we need to understand what's going on. And we also need to dive into moments where we purge the cache manually, maybe with some timeout. And so what's the point of for now, it stays forever. It doesn't have any expiration date. And I believe if we put it there for a year, even the labels will be different. We need to somehow purge the cache after some kind of a timeout, maybe like a month.
Yeah.
But only if it's not, maybe if there is a timestamp. There should be kind of a timestamp when the cache is updated, and if there is a week since the last update, we just purge it.
You know, it's
Depends.
interesting. It's interesting to note that if the query ever changes,
If the query changes, yeah, it will change the cache too. There is also the whole part of the documentation about breaking schema changes and how it does affect the cache on the Apollo cache persist.
Interesting. Wow. Wow. Yeah. All right. It's fun.
Yeah, it's
Thanks
fun.
for-
It's a nice way to put it.
Thanks for chatting
It may
about
not be the most exciting thing, but once it's working, it's going to be an absolute game changer, right?
That's so
For
optimistic.
PMs especially.
So
yeah.
Just think of the ego at the end, right?
Yeah.
You do sound just like my senior EM, because every single time I complain to him about like, I hate this feature, I don't want to work on it, even it's but think about project managers that just open these issues 100 times a day and how much time you will save.
Yeah, and I guess you've maybe got some what would you call it, like key problem areas or something that you've got in mind already, but as you start sort of rolling it further and further, it's gonna be huge. So awesome.
the rolling further is the thing that I think concerns both Natalia and I, would be the stickiness of where it is. And
yeah, you don't that's you don't want to just switch it on for everything, because you do want to be quite elaborate, quite specific, quite verbose about where you do and don't.
Yeah, that'll be
yeah, I just want to put as many flags on it, right? It's like, please don't use this everywhere. This is the part of the code that designed specifically to solve this problem, and please evaluate like 10 different. There is a questionnaire, like go through it, and if the answer is no, at least for one of 10 questions, don't use this.
Yeah, like where you're saying before, like realistically, we should be figuring out why is the query so slow, or in this instance, we know why it is, because it has to traverse through some crazy hierarchy of groups of projects. But
even in this case, I had a proposal, and I know backend is looking into it, and this is basically a short circuit. Labels are returned by GraphQL in pages, right? We have 100 entities, and that's it. If you want to override this page size, it's very specifically designed on the backend, but by default, 100 labels is what you get.
Yeah.
Why can't we, while we're doing this huge operation of going through all the labels through the project, why can't we just do a short circuit? Whenever we have 100 labels, we just stop the search and send 100 labels back to the user. Because still 100 labels, we cannot show more in this particular case. It will be maybe slightly, but faster. Instances like GitLab.com. Accumulating 100 queries will be definitely not 30 seconds.
Yeah. I every once in a while I'm on a really bad internet, and I've noticed things like labels and assignee lists, and if I'm typing something and hit add, things take forever. At the same time, at the web ID, we have one endpoint where we get all file entries of the main GitLab project, which is like 26 is a list of like 26,000 strings or something like that. And it happens like 3 to 4 seconds, which you would imagine we'd be able to get labels. A fraction of that time. So yeah, there's something is it'd be nice to address the root problem for sure. Yeah, no, this is thanks for talking about it. I think this is really good at helping understand deeper into the workings of Apollo Cache, and also brainstorming this specific problem. It was a good discussion. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up too. I definitely learned so many things I didn't know about Apollo Cache and working on that.
It's elegant.
It's still weird elegance. It was more elegant for Apollo 2. It's not as elegant for Apollo 3, but I just believe that we have so many brilliant developers to improve it. I just like kickstarting it and then we have people just making it better with every iteration.
Yeah, that is good. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll catch you all later.
Have a great weekend. Catch you
Have a
later.
nice weekend.
Yes.
This will be back on your plate Monday for sure. All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.